Bibles to Exodus 20, and we are continuing looking at the Ten Commandments together. This is the one you've all been waiting for. It's like giving the talk to the kid. Exodus chapter 20. Then God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, or any likeness of what is in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them, or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquities of the fathers on the children, on the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving kindness to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work. You or your son or your daughter, your male or your female servant, or your cattle, or your sojourner who stays with you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. And therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be prolonged in the land which the Lord your God gives you. You shall not murder. And then today's word of God to you, you shall not commit adultery. And the congregation grew quiet. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And again, verse 14, you shall not commit adultery. This is the word of the Lord. Well, we live in a sex-crazed culture, don't we? We do. You can't do anything without having it offered to you by way of some sort of sexual attraction. You can't buy a BMW. You can't go to McDonald's. You can't do anything. You can't watch a football game. You can do nothing unless the culture tells you that the only way that you can properly be attracted to whatever it is that you're interested to do is to be attracted through the vehicle, through the agency, through the conduit of sexuality. Sexuality is the thing that properly, apparently, connects you to every other thing that is real. And I want to get this out of the way because I know you're all wondering. That's nonsense, which is the most polite word I could come up with in the pulpit. The reason that God says adultery is bad for you is because marriage is good for you. You see the point he's making? He's not telling you about what it is that you can't do. He's giving you a proposal about what it is that will actually benefit you and what will cause your life to actually flourish and to be all that you thought it could be. It's not that adultery is bad, it is. It's that marriage is good. Now, everybody knows that, but you're not going to hear it on the media. Do you know who Linda Waite is? Linda Waite is a University of Chicago researcher, and she wrote a book called The Case for Marriage a couple of years ago. Now, the reason you're not going to hear anything about it is because Linda Waite, in The Case for Marriage, tells you everything that your culture says is a lie. That the only way that you're going to flourish as a human being is actually through marriage. And so she makes the case that everybody who is married actually experiences at every level of life an improved life. Do you know that married people live longer? Do you know that married people are more economically secure? Do you know that married people are more psychologically healthy? Married people don't commit suicide at near the rate that single people do. Marriage is good for you. And of course, she's not the only one. Do you know who Pamela Paul is? She just wrote a book a couple years ago. And people were surprised by Pamela Paul's book, another social researcher, a female. And what did she title her book? Pornified. And what was the point that she was making as a social scientist and as a woman? She is making the case that American culture has become so dripped in pornography that it's virtually pornified in every category of its existence. And that pornification of our culture has deteriorated and decayed our culture to such a point that half of what you're experiencing now is because we live this over-sexualized life as if sex is the be-all and end-all of everything that's your identity and who you think you are. And Pamela Paul says, I don't think so. So the point that Linda Wade and Pamela Paul are making is that marriage works. And it works for the ultimate benefit of the culture, and it works for the ultimate benefit of the people involved in the culture. And neither of these women are Christians. They are just people who understand the gift and the grace of God. Do we need a doctor? One Park Street. Could you step outside, please, with that? Thank you. They drop like flies when I'm preaching. I remember I was about 2 months out of seminary, pastoring Covenant Presbyterian Church, suburban Philadelphia, and there was this lady who sat up front, and she always used to wear these big hats. Now, if you wear a big hat, you will sit up front. That's just the way it works, right? So she had this big lid, had flowers all over it. It was just, She looked top-heavy to me. And we're standing up singing a good old Presbyterian hymn, which is not a snappy thing generally. And she went right over. And, we had some physicians in the congregation, and I didn't know what to do, and they took care of her, and they carried her out, and this, and I said, I honestly don't know what to do. And they said, keep preaching. Presbyterians are a cold bunch. All right, so I'm going to keep going. You okay with that? All right, he's a young man. They'll take care of him. He'll be all right. So the question is, why does marriage work? Because every social scientist will tell you that it works. All the statistics are piled up in favor of marriage. Why does it work? And it's been working since Genesis. It's not new information for us. People might be stumbling into it, lurching uncontrollably into the truth even when they don't mean to. But why does it work? And I'll tell you why it works. I'm going to give you 3 reasons, 3 kind of phrases that I hope that you can remember. You shall not commit adultery because you shall commit great marriage. That's the point. All right? First of all, marriage works because it's a complementary companionship. It's a complementary companionship. The second reason that marriage works is because it's a covenant commitment. It's a complementary companionship, and it's a covenant commitment. And the third reason that marriage works is because it's character cardiology. In other words, it's the sort of thing that works on your heart in a way that creates character and strength in you in places where you don't expect it to happen. So marriage is a complementary companionship, marriage is a covenant commitment, and marriage is character cardiology. So let's kind of see what those mean. First of all, marriage is a complementary companionship. Do you remember the reason that God created Eve? Because it was not good for man to be alone. Now, that's interesting because if you read Genesis, virtually in every case, God sets the stars in place, God creates the plants, God creates the animals, God creates Adam, God creates, and every time God creates, what does he say? That's good. That's very good. God is pleased with the creation. The one time that he says, oh, that's not good, it's when man is alone. Now, by the way, you all know this already. It's so steeped in your psyche that you know it. What person has not said, that guy needs a woman? Were they wrong? They were not wrong. God knew that from the beginning. It's always been true. It will always remain true. The two shall become one flesh. Now, think about that for a minute. God creates two complementary, different, unique individuals, male and female, and he says that those two different types of humanity become the same type of humanity. And the only thing that will create that sameness is if those two parts are different, because the two different parts is what creates the unique whole part. H2O is water, H1O isn't. And that's true in every category of creation. And so what God is saying is that man is better off when he has a wife. And you know that's true. You do. And as Linda Waite said in The Case for Marriage, that man is better off economically. That man might say to himself, I'm not getting married because it's going to be an economic struggle for me, and he'll be 30 years from now wrong about that. He will have had more money and financial success as a married man, statistics show, than if he had stayed an unmarried man. He will live longer. Do you realize that married people actually live longer? There's a shorter lifespan because you're alone. Do you realize that you are more safe married and as not married? Do you realize that most of the abuse between men and women are with people who are cohabitating, not marriage? I bet they didn't tell you that statistic, but Linda Waite does in her book, University of Chicago. Read it. That's where the real trouble occurs. Psychologically, much better off. Why? Because God designed marriage for human flourishing. In other words, when you are flourishing, you are growing in the way that God had planned you to grow. And as you grow in Christ, you grow in the relationship and you become more of what God intended you to be. And that kind of growth requires you to stretch in ways that are beyond you. And the best way for you to stretch beyond you is to live with someone in marriage who is not you. And God knew that. So marriage is the number one that I can think of tool of sanctification that God uses. You will be better off. It's a complementary relationship. It's a complementary relationship. Second, it's a covenant commitment. And what do I mean by a covenant commitment? Do you remember how in the book of Proverbs, Solomon talks about a woman who leaves her young husband, and what he says about that? He says, if you leave what? The companion of your youth. The companion of your youth, and she forgets her covenant. She forgets her covenant. What is a covenant? A covenant is a promise before God. It's a contract. It's an obligation of relational commitment. And that's what marriage is. Now, I'm fully aware that we don't think that that's what it is. We think that it's a cultural convenience. It's a way just to sort of manage our relationships. But tell that to the IRS. Check the wrong box and see what happens. You won't get through probate court unless you have that box checked the right way, will you? It's a contract. And so it's a public binding contract. People come and say, Steve, we'd like to write our own vows. We have some things we want to say to each other. And you know what I say? No. Because I know what you're going to write. You're going to write a bunch of slurpy, sloppy, sentimental stuff, and it has nothing to do with for better, for worse, richer, for poorer, sickness and health, until death do us part. Because what you're doing in a marriage ceremony is making a public contract, a commitment to stay with that person the rest of your life, no matter what. And buddy, your speech better count for something. You're not just going to blurt that out, are you? I hope not. So I'm going to make you say it right out loud, because then you're culpable before the Lord. You said it, you made a promise, you did it in front of the Lord, you did it in front of me, you did it in front of a lot of people, and most importantly, you said it to your spouse. And that contract is binding. You don't get to quit. You don't get to go away. And what that contract does is it takes your independence and it contractually exchanges your independence for reciprocity. You're no longer independent. The two shall be one. You are now reciprocally dependent upon each other. And it's not that you are Bob and Sue. You are Bob and Sue. Thank you very much. I worked all week on that. The two shall become one. You are a different entity. You're something above the two of you independently. And because that's true, that is a sign of a covenant. And as Linda Waite points out in her book, The Case for Marriage, this is what creates fidelity in your life. Do you realize, and again, don't argue with me, argue with the University of Chicago social scientist, all right? Go read the book. Argue with her. If you are cohabitating, you are not married, if you're a man, you are 4 times more likely to cheat on who you're living with. Every woman's like, yeah, I knew that. Yeah, don't get uppity, because if you're a woman, you're 8 times more likely to cheat. And why are you looking for love in all the wrong places? Because you're hunting for someone who will say, I do. That's why. You know, all these guys who think, he loves me. He does. He says he loves me. Really. Do you know how a guy loves you, ladies? You want to know how it is? You can, and it's a certain way. I mean, he'll say, I love you in the bar. He's known you 5 minutes. I love you. This is how you know for sure when he says, I do. And before then, you don't know. You don't know. Now, it's a publicly binding contract. Do you realize, again, read Linda Waite, read the book, that only 1 in 10 couples, 1 in 10, that's 10% for those who are a long way from math and school. In other words, 90% failure rate of couples who do not get married and cohabitate after 5 years, 90% of those couples are not together. So don't give me some fancy schmancy stuff about, oh, you're just a prude. You're a knucklehead. Are you kidding me? I'm not a prude, I'm trying to keep you together. But you're going to fail, and you have a 90% failure rate by cohabitation. 90%. If you had a 90% chance to get run over a bus on Elm Street as you left this morning, what do you think I would do? I'd make you go out Park Street. Right? So if it's a 90% failure rate of a couple who's going to cohabitate, what am I going to tell them to do? Get married or move out. It's the only choice. It's the only choice. You have a 90% failure rate. I'm giving you an opportunity to have what you really want, which is a permanent relationship. Now, time for the sex talk. Do I laugh? What do I say? What do I do? I know this makes people very uncomfortable. So how does sex fit into this? Why do not commit adultery? Why is that the trigger mechanism? Why does, is God prudish? Is he just, he created you, but he's just confused about the sex thing? He's like, well, I never expected them to do that. Poor God. Snuck up on your creator. No, it's because sex was not designed ever as some sort of biological urge that you just, need to answer. Sort of like going to the restroom. No. It is not some necessary evil, which, for maybe centuries, some churches told you, don't be doing that unless you have kids. It's a necessary evil, sort of got to stomach your way through it just so you can procreate. It's not that. And it's not what we think it is now either. And what do we think it is now? Well, it's some sort of self-expression. I'm a better me. This is how I find myself. Oh. Okay, I've got jokes, but I'm going to let that go. All right, let me tell you what sex is for Christian couples, Christian married couples. Sex is a covenant renewal ceremony. What sex says to a couple who's married is, I belong to you. You can count on me forever. I'm yours in sickness and in health, for richer, for poorer, till death do us part. And every time that you sleep together, you're saying yes to that reality before the Lord. And that's why adultery is so heinous. Because if you misuse sex, it works the opposite way that you think it will. Instead of saying, I belong to you, it says, you can't trust me. I may or may not be here for you tomorrow. You don't know that for sure. So instead of celebrating something permanent, you've engaged in something temporary and expected a permanent expression to satisfy a temporary goal. And that will go in the wrong direction for you. It's why, when you have the one-night stand, you're mad at the guy because he didn't call you in the morning. Well, why are you mad? You're mad because in your heart, you know that what you were doing was celebrating something deeper, and it just didn't work out. And you were hoping to use the celebration to gain the permanence. But I'm sorry, folks, that's getting the cart before the horse. You get the permanence, and then you get to celebrate the permanence, but not before. So it's not that Christians have a low view of sex. The reason that we think about this is because we have such a high view. We know how beautiful it can be with your spouse. We know that it's what the Lord has intended for us. We know that it's what enriches us and calls us into a deeper covenant commitment with one another. And because it says, I belong to you, you can trust me, I'm yours, then sex is only properly used between a married man and a woman before the Lord. Before that, it says just the opposite. It says something completely different. And if you're having sex before marriage, you're lying. That's what you're doing. It's a covenant commitment. It's a complementary companionship, and it's a covenant commitment. But not only that, it's character cardiology. You know what I mean by character cardiology? You know what a cardiologist does, right? Puts a little thing on your ticker. Make sure you're still breathing. Run some tests, EKG, make sure the heart's pumping right, everything's doing the right way. Well, that's what marriage does for you. You will not be as fully formed as a man without a wife. You won't. And in fact, what the Bible teaches is if you are not going to be married, that will require a special gift from God. That's what Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians. He says, everyone should be married, but if you're not going to be married, you're going to have the gift of celibacy. In other words, you're going to have a special endowment from the Holy Spirit, and that is going to be unique. The norm is that we're married. And so men, you're better off obviously, getting married and finding a Christian woman and celebrating the covenant with her as much as you can. Do you know that 1 Corinthians 7 commands a husband and wife to not withhold sexual relations from each other, except for one reason. And what's that one reason? A time of prayer. Jointly agreed to. And I'm guessing that's why some of you have a short prayer life. We're not prudes. We just want it used the right way. And the right way will fulfill you in ways that you never imagined in your life. It really will. Character cardiology. Why do you need a cardiologist? Because your heart is broken. It's in the wrong condition. And because your heart is broken, because you've experienced so much sin in your relationships, and what I mean by that is not that you have been an aggressive sinner, although we all have. I mean, you have been ambushed, haven't you? Promises have been broken. Things didn't work out the way you wanted them to work out. And we have all experienced that brokenness and that hurt and that pain. And we were designed for companionship, and now the companionship was gone. We were designed for a deep and abiding commitment where we're secure and know that the person we're with is someone who we can trust completely with our lives. And that maybe have been broken for you. And that breaks our heart. And when your heart is broken, you need a cardiologist to come and fix it. But let me tell you something about a broken heart. And I don't mean this in a pejorative sense at all, but a broken heart, you can't rely on it. You can't trust it to speak well to you. Because your heart's broken, it will speak broken things to you. It will invite you to false cures, to counterfeit health. You will think that, oh, if I just do it this way, I can circumvent what the Lord has for me. And you'll find that that breaks and disintegrates in your hands. It won't last. It won't do what the Lord has designed it to do. And that's what Jeremiah was talking about. The heart is deceitfully wicked above all things and beyond cure. Unless Christ enters your heart and changes the heart of stone to a heart of flesh, our heart is going to lie to us about what's good for us. Now, you know this in every category of your life. People want the wrong things, right? Oh, what's a junkie want? Sobriety or a fix? A junkie wants the fix. What's a drunk want? He wants a drink. You want the wrong things. Your heart is crying out for the wrong things. And, you know, people just say, just follow your heart. Just follow your heart. Does that sound good? Follow your heart. Now, you never say that for bad things. You know, no one said to Jeffrey Dahmer, oh, he was just following his heart. You know, who's on TV right now saying, Vladimir, just follow your heart. Take Ukraine. Just follow your heart. Be all you can be. You know, you want what you want, so please, just have what you want. No. A lot of what we want as human beings is horrible. You want the wrong thing. Ted Bundy wanted women so he could kill them. That's what he wanted. No, you have to argue with your heart. You have to preach the gospel to your heart. You have to say to your heart, I will not accept anything you say to me that violates the command of my God, because God is the creator. He built my heart. He knows how it's wired. He knows where all the synapses are. He knows how it all moves together, and he knows what's best for us. And so what we have to do is always trust that God is right, even when you have to disagree with your own heart. And in your culture, that's what you're going to have to do. Because your culture tells you that you're erudite, special, and really smart if you're loose about sex. And I have bad news for you this morning. You're not erudite or smart or anything else. You're just hoodwinked. You're just fooled. If your highest identity is determined by your sexuality, you need help. As Christians, your highest identity is determined by the fact that you're united to Jesus Christ, the King of glory, by faith. And he is your identity, and he is your hope. And if you never have sex again, it won't matter. That's how much you have to care about that. That's what's important. So Jesus comes along and does something that we sometimes don't understand. Because when you come into church, you're saying to yourself, oh, he's going to give me another rule about this. And I'm not. Jesus doesn't give you rules because without him, you can't keep them. So what's the point? What Jesus gives you is a new heart. Jesus takes your heart of stone and changes it to a heart of flesh so that now you begin to want what you're supposed to want. You begin to desire what you're supposed to desire. If you're a junkie, you begin to desire sobriety. The rule, just don't drink, is not going to help a drunk. It's a waste of time. You have to change that person's heart so that person does not want to drink. And the only way I know to do that is if they will confess Jesus Christ and change their heart of stone to a heart of flesh. Old things pass away, behold, everything becomes new. And the work of God in your heart is to change you so you begin to want the right things. You begin to want what Jesus wants. And that's the whole point, because love changes what you want. Every guy knows this. You fall in love with a girl, right? And you're real knucklehead. You're out every night of the week with your buddies, probably ice fishing. Sitting on a bucket looking at a flag. You know, watching the game, never send a card, don't pay any attention at all. He meets this girl, and the guys love this guy. You know, he's with them all the time. Hey, he's our best buddy. Hey, hey, hey. Then he meets a girl. He falls in love. And you know what the next conversation is? Where's Bob? You can't find him. He's always with that girl. You know why he's with that girl? He loves her. And pretty soon, the love of that girl changes him. And you meet him 3 years later, and you haven't seen him for 3 years. He's got a suit on, he's got his hair cut, he's going to church, he's sober. Saying, what happened to you? Here's what he'll tell you. I fell in love. I fell in love. Love changes you. And you know what? If you fall in love with Jesus, he'll change you. And you'll start wanting what he wants. You'll start desiring what he desires. His yoke will be easy. His burden will be light. You'll walk in the paths of righteousness. And you'll say, the law of the Lord is perfect and it restores my soul. And you'll want what he wants. And what you'll want is a lifetime complementary partner. Someone who isn't you. So you know the old line, marry your mother. That also means don't marry your father. Complementary. A man and a woman is the only God-ordained allowable marriage. Period. Because it won't do for you what you think it's going to do. You just married yourself, so what? Complementary. Complement. You want an unshakable commitment, don't you? Doesn't everybody want that? Isn't that what your heart desires? Someone who says, I belong to you forever. I'll never leave you no matter what happens. I won't quit on you. I don't care how bad it gets for you. I don't care how much life goes sideways. I will walk with you in the thick and in the thin. There's nothing I won't do to be with you. Isn't that what your heart wants? Well, guess what? There's only one way to get that. And isn't what your heart wants real character? Every person I know who's had a struggling marriage has come, and the problem is character. Not being godly. acting like a fool, and calling it smart. Isn't that what the New Testament says? Proclaiming to be wise, they became fools. And that breaks relationships. So I pray this morning as you come to the table that you'll come to the Christ who is your bridegroom. And we are his church, and we are the bride of Christ. And because of his covenant commitment to us, we are in a secure and durable relationship. And we have the greatest complement of all, the complementary union with Jesus Christ, who's not us. He's different from us, but that changes us. And we have in Jesus Christ a covenant commitment because he is our covenant head and has done for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And he will never quit on us, ever. And we have in Jesus Christ a durable character who changes our heart from a heart of stone to a heart of flesh. And in that marriage, and in that union of Jesus Christ and his church, our marriages are supposed to be just a little piece of that. A mirror to show us what it really looks like, just a little slice of heaven. So I pray this morning that you will trust the Christ of Scripture with a complementary partner, with a covenant commitment that will not quit, and with character that looks like Jesus. Let's pray together. Lord, this morning as we come to the table, I pray that we'll be the kind of people who